I'm endlessly fascinated and curious about the world around us, about business, about politics, about the arts, about culture, developments, social issues, and the people. Most importantly, about the people that are shaping our future. Every night, I get the opportunity to have conversations, to dive into conversations with thought leaders, with change makers, entrepreneurs, politicians, and everyday heroes who unpack the ideas and stories that I think matter to all of us. What's the future of our economy? What's the future of our country? How do we build stronger communities? What can we learn from music, theater, sports, politics, the arts? How does policy shape our real lives? What does leadership look like, real leadership in today's environment? If it's interesting and relevant and topical and we're talking about it, you'll hear about it here at 6 o'clock on the Brian Crombie Radio Hour. I want to have real conversations, in-depth conversations. These are ideas we're sharing. This is the Brian Crombie Radio Hour. Thanks for joining me. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour. One of my heroes when I was a kid growing up in Montreal was Ken Dryden, and then he became a hero in politics as well. And I'll talk a little bit about my own personal recollections, but a gentleman in politics and in our community that I really respect, Jack Siegel, posted his own personal recollections of Ken Dryden, who passed away this past week, and some of his career highlights. And so I thought it'd be great if we could get Jack to tell us a little bit about this gentleman and his own personal experiences. Jack Siegel, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on. Happy to join you.
My pleasure. So tell us a little bit about how you met Ken Dryden, how you remember him, and then maybe after some personal recollections, you could tell us all a little bit about him and his career.
Oh, I suppose just about anybody in Canada feels they met him if they were around in 1972, even apart from being a Habs fan. So I obviously knew who Ken Dryden was from the time I was in junior high school. And I guess my initial memory was freaking out in the junior high library when we won the Canada-Russia series. Subsequent to that, was aware of him, but no more than that until I recall being in my car one day, and I guess it was early 2004, and heard that my member of parliament, who I'd been working with for years, Art Eggleton, was retiring, and in the same breath that Ken Dryden was going to be the candidate there. I had no idea Ken was particularly interested in politics. I knew a fair bit about him. I knew the game, another thing that most Canadian guys knew if they were around at the relevant time. But really had no knowledge of him. I'm involved in the Liberal Party at all levels, including my local association. So it was just a matter of time until we had an initial conversation. And the first real encounter, though, was when we hosted a local coffee party for the candidate for people to come meet him in our home with our son, who at the time was maybe 3 or 4 months old. Normally, these things attract 3, 4, 5 people when you drop a piece of paper around the block or 2 block radius. This time we had most of the neighborhood in. Probably the first sign that this was not going to be politics as usual. And what I remember of that, I suppose, over and above knowing or getting to know Ken, was the way he interacted with people, and in particular with the baby we had in the house. He delivered most of his remarks holding my 4-month-old son and playing with him at the same time as he spoke, which I think was a very early indication for me of the kind of guy Ken is. The least significant people in the discussion, with nothing to offer him, are often the ones who would get the most of his attention. That might be an indicator as to why Ken did not succeed when he ran for leader of the Liberal Party, which we can segue into a whole other aspect of him later on. So from that forward, I knew Ken, went to riding association meetings, and then he asked me for the following election in 2000 and I guess it was six. Yeah, 2000. Yeah, there was the 2005, 2006 election, the one that straddled Christmas. He asked me to chair the campaign, and so we worked very closely on that. I got to know him and his wife Linda, and I guess the rest is some would say it from there was history. It was a lengthy, close working relationship through a number of elections and a leadership contest, which he unfortunately didn't succeed at, but certainly set out a path of his own on.
Tell me about some of the policies that he was so passionate about.
Ken, again, the hallmark of Ken's career, had it not been negated by the defeat of the Martin government in 2005, was childcare. He was in one of his incarnations between the net and politics. He was, I think the title was Children's Commissioner for Ontario. He had a long and abiding interest in kids, and he was the responsible minister who negotiated universal childcare agreements with all of the provinces back in 2004, 2005. And it was on its way to implementation when the NDP voted non-confidence in the government. And as Ken put it, referring to Jack Layton in a number of speeches in the years that followed, it was, well, thanks, Jack. People don't often recognize that the NDP delayed the implementation of, I think, what is fast becoming one of our most important social programs by close to 20 years. In any event, that is water under the bridge. And Ken's perspective, as he put it, and I think he even wrote a book at one point, with it on the cover, it was up of Big Canada. Progressive, advanced, dynamic country that had, as part of its social contract, not only the existing social safety net that we have, but an expanded one, which eventually happened, in more recent years, particularly with the Canada Child Benefit and with the implementation of childcare.
Tell me a little bit about his run for leader.
What I remember of that, I was chairing his campaign in 06 when we lost, and also closely in touch with Ottawa, where I was national campaign legal advisor. So on election night, the call came down. I got an early heads up from the party president that Prime Minister Martin would be resigning as leader, or announcing his resignation that same evening. I remember pulling Ken aside at our local victory party and saying, the Prime Minister is going to announce his resignation as leader shortly. You're going to be getting an awful lot of questions almost immediately about leadership. My advice at the time was, don't say yes, don't say no. Say that tonight was Mr. Martin's, and we thank him for his leadership, and we'll have further discussions. Well, those discussions went on for a few weeks. It ended up in an ironic situation in my own household, where my wife, who had been chief of staff to Gerard Kennedy when he was at Queen's Park, got a call from Gerard, and we found out that Gerard was running as well. So we quickly developed a divided loyalties household with an interesting twist. The financial contribution to Gerard's campaign came from me, and the financial contribution to Ken's campaign came from Kerry. So we managed that. Ken's campaign was truly, an exercise in coming to understand the man. No matter how hard we tried, Ken insisted on uh, respect for the people that he was asking support of. That manifested itself in very long conversations with each individual he'd call, where the typical political candidate would, in the course of an evening of phoning, get in, 30 or 40 calls. Ken got 10 to 15 because people wanted to talk to him. And once he had them engaged, he wasn't going to dismiss them readily. Not only that, he was a bit uncomfortable asking for things from people. So it was an exercise in candidate training that was partially successful by the end, but it was an exercise nonetheless. Getting him to simply ask at the end of the conversation for people's votes, support, or financial support. He didn't like asking people for things for himself, and this was perceived that way. At the end of the day, the biggest knock on Ken in the public sphere had been his speaking ability. He tended to be a little ponderous. But by the time we got him to the convention, he'd been provided with some great coaching from an acting coach, I think it was, on how to deliver a speech. And even from the teams that finished ahead of him, the general consensus was that Ken gave the best speech at that convention. He was the one who brought the house down.
Why didn't he win?
I think it was a combination of factors. I think the biggest one was that the attention from the beginning went to the people with the teams that had been built up to the greatest numbers. And that came from doing the retail politics I was talking about earlier. Asking for money was difficult for Ken. Other people had to ask for him largely. And in terms of financing the campaign, we had a further hit when in the middle of the leadership race, the Harper Conservatives lowered the contribution limit. I think it was from $5,000 to $1,000. And the campaign plan had been to go to people largely, but not entirely, in Ken's past, hockey and public service, asking for larger contributions than that. So we didn't raise as much money as we had hoped to. Ken lent his own money, a significant amount of it, to the campaign to keep it going. And at the end of the day, we picked up votes on the second ballot, but that was the end of the road.
I remember that convention. It was a pretty noteworthy one.
It was one of the most exciting political events I've ever been to in my career.
Um, what do you think he would think of where Canada is today? I think, wrote numerous different columns. He wrote books, but also, columns and op-eds in the paper. He was very up to speed on and kept quite abreast of what was going on in Canada and the globe. What do you think he would think of where we are today?
Well, he always had a problem with divisive politics. Just in the last 36 hours, looking on Facebook, the tributes coming in from people who opposed him as well as people who worked with him in politics. I think the divisive nature of Canadian politics, of North American politics today, if not even more broadly, was no doubt distressing for him. At the same time, he had moved on from that. He had become a fantastic advocate for concussion safety in sports. And it was speaking on that subject, actually, that was the last time I saw him.
We're going to take a break for some messages. When I come back with Jack Siegel talking about Ken Dryden, I'm going to talk a little bit about my own experience because it's slightly different than yours. And we're going to talk a little bit about hockey. Stay with us, everyone. Back in 2 minutes. We're going to chat a little bit tonight about Ken Dryden, who passed away last week. Stay with us, everyone. Back in 2. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour. My guest tonight is Jack Siegel, who worked very closely, incredibly closely, with Ken Dryden in politics, and Ken Dryden passed away regrettably last week, and so therefore And Jack posted some very poignant comments about his personal relationship with Ken. So I thought it'd be really great to have Jack Siegel, who I know through politics, talk a little bit tonight about his recollections and history of Ken Dryden. I'd like to offer a couple of my own thoughts, if I could, because my first connection with Ken Dryden was with hockey, both as a fan in the 1970s, but then during the 1990s. I worked for the Molson companies, and I was Molson owned the Montreal Canadiens at that time, and I was responsible for the Montreal Canadiens from a financial, strategic, real estate standpoint, and oversaw the construction of what was then the Molson Center, became the Bell Center, and Ken Dryden was very involved in the alumni organization at the Montreal Canadiens, and so I had numerous interactions with him personally from a hockey standpoint, as you said, Jack, I had no knowledge that he had any interest in politics at that time, and so it was really about sports, about hockey, and things like that. And I grew up in Montreal, and so when Ken Dryden came from nowhere, called up from the minors, played 6 games of the regular season, which is the minimum one has to play to qualify to be in the playoffs. Won all 6 of those games. They ended up Vachon, who was the goaltender of the Montreal Canadiens at the time, very well thought of, but got unseated by Dryden, who became the playoff goaltender and won the what is it called? The Calder Trophy, I think, for the most valuable player in the
Conn Smythe.
Conn Smythe in
The Calder didn't come for another year.
for another year. I apologize. So he won it for being the most valuable player, and he was incredibly successful during that run. And that was a victory, the first of how many? 5 different Stanley Cup victories, and then went on the next year to win Rookie of the Year. So an incredible performance, and that was even before it came to the Canada-Russia series that you talked about off the top. That he became known to everyone in Canada, unquestionably, even if they didn't know about his victory in the Stanley Cup. So an incredible, successful career, but not a long career. Um, uh, it wasn't. He decided that he wanted to become a lawyer, and got called to the bar and articled, and didn't have a long career playing hockey, though it was, an incredibly successful one. What's your recollection of the hockey other than the Russia Canada series?
I think it was much the same as yours, actually, Brian. The winning Rookie of the year after he was most valuable player in the playoffs, is probably an accomplishment we'll never see in any other sport after that. It was, to my mind, an indication of just the incredible sports brilliance of the man, as opposed to the intellectual brilliance, which was also in a league of its own.
The picture that you often see of him is him standing up tall with both of his hands on the top of the goalie stick. Why is that such an iconic picture?
Uh, if you haven't met Ken face to face, you might not realize the size of the man. I had a perception as a kid, for some reason, that goalies, probably because they're always kind of in a crouched position in front of the net, were very short people. Ken is the exact opposite. He, I'm guessing, would have been about 6'6". So the very large goal stick was something that actually fit rather comfortably, straight up and down on the ice, with his hands on the top of it and resting his chin. When there was no action on the ice, or it was at the far end, well, he would be watching very closely.
I think it's got something to do with he was just such a cool character that he just didn't get overly anxious about what was going on. If the play was in the other end, he would take a breather and relax. So he could be incredibly intense and unbelievably successful, obviously, as a goaltender, but also he kept his nerves under control.
I think that's very much the case, and it was the same in politics. No matter how things went, and there were good days and there were really bad days, he was never over the top and never really rattled.
You mentioned, how attractive he was as someone that people would want to meet and I presume get autographs from and hockey sticks signed and things like that in politics. He was just the same in the alumni organization when I was, meeting him, and he would come to games and the opening of the Molson Center, which he attended, and I had the privilege of getting his autograph that night. He was very welcoming to anyone and everyone, and chatting with them. He had I don't know if it's unique. I've seen it with Brian Mulroney. I've seen it with John Turner. You've probably seen it far often than I. But there are some individuals in life and in politics that have an ability to connect with people. Um, what is that? Like, is it charisma? It's not. I don't think it's charisma. It's almost the opposite. Charisma is all about you. It's something about making it all about the other person that you're talking to. They talked about John Turner and his blue eyes, but what is it that Ken Dryden made you feel important when he spoke with you? What was it? What is it?
Because he wasn't making you feel important. He felt you were important. The constant joke in his campaigns, both at the doors and in leadership, uh, was that Ken Dryden doesn't work a room; the room works him, and it works him very slowly because each person who wants to talk to him, and this would be more the case for politics than in hockey, but I think even then, uh, they're important in their own right, and in politics, he was effectively asking them for something, support in one form or another. He thought it was rude to cut the conversation short. Now, you know from I think your involvements in politics as well, Brian, that when you're with the candidate, you want them to get to as many faces as possible. This just didn't happen with Ken because if you tried to move him on to the next door or to the next person at an event, you would get a very curt, very unlike Ken in any other circumstance, a very curt, I'm not done yet. And he turned back to the person he was speaking to and finished the conversation. And if they wanted to tell him where they were when we won the Canada Russia series, he was going to listen to that as if he'd never heard a story like that before. It was really, really something to be admired, but something to be fought if you were trying to get him to meet more people.
But it was very effective. People that met him and experienced that, loved the man and were committed to the guy. And you've undoubtedly seen it with other people. I have. You've probably seen it with far more because of your involvement experience. But Brian Mulroney was like that. An incredible personal touch, and it worked very successfully for him. I mentioned John Turner. I think David Peterson had that ability. But yet, so many advanced people, so many operatives wanted to do exactly what you described, which is move them on to meet as many people. So if the operatives, the smart people, the professionals want you to move to as many people as possible, but yet a couple of individuals have got that ability to incredibly connect so well with people, maybe those people are right and the operatives are wrong. What do you think?
It depends what the goal is. If you're talking about, interpersonal connections, absolutely. And it really to take a cliche, to know Ken was to love him. It was just such a powerful connection that he could establish with people. But in terms of politics, if getting elected uh, as leader was the goal, or raising money for campaigns and meeting more people who are potential contributors, the very fact that he took so much time with each individual was an impediment.
So if you were running someone's campaign today, what would you tell them?
Uh, Look him in the eye, be as direct and personal as you possibly can, make the connection, but you need to move on. If there's a reason to talk to that person some more, let's come back to that when we're not surrounded by 40 other people who are waiting to touch your ring, or your six rings in Ken's case.
He also wrote a fair amount,
Oh God.
successful books.
It started with the game, which is, I think, to this day acknowledged as one of the masterpieces about what it's like to be involved in professional hockey. And he kept following that up. Uh, I've got probably half a dozen of his books sitting in my house. There's one that's unfinished called The Class, which was the last full book that he wrote, which uh, completely different from many of the things we've been talking about. He followed his public school class, reconnected with a number of them, and traced their lives. And he develops this understanding of the people that he grew up with in Etobicoke, starting in, I guess, in the early 1950s. Uh, it wouldn't cross my mind to be the subject matter for a published book, maybe for a little group memoir or something for the school reunion, but he made it into something bigger than that. And maybe that sums him up. The things he did became bigger than what they would otherwise have been.
When his political life is remembered, what do you think he'll be remembered for? Is it a policy? Is it his approach? Is it leadership campaign? What do you think he'll be remembered for?
I think it'll be remembered for two things, actually. It'll be for the connections he made in the local community. Big shot cabinet ministers, and he was in cabinet for, the first significant piece of his political career. Uh, don't generally have time to take care of local interests. Ken was always on top of those kinds of things, and he had a terrific constituency staff. And the policy perspectives he was advancing, I think, continue to this day to speak to a progressive, and generous, and successful approach to a future for Canada.
A progressive, successful future for Canada.
Yeah, there are a lot of people today who seem to be taking the perspective that the two are somehow at loggerheads. That if we concentrate on expanding the social safety net of elevating people up to a preferred level of existence, that's going to come at a cost of our economic success. And Ken profoundly disagreed and felt that the more that people could be enabled to achieve, the more we all could achieve.
So, in the United States, obviously the Republican Party, Donald Trump won the last election, won a popular vote. In Canada, Pierre Poilievre and the Conservative Party came within what, less than 2 points or something like that of winning the popular vote, and did better than they've ever done up to, I think it was Mulroney or maybe it was Diefenbaker. Can't even remember what the number is in popular vote. So they did, even though they didn't win, they increased their popular vote quite significantly. Is there a rightward trend in Canada, the United States, worldwide to that kind of an environment?
There may be. I think a lot of people who might be inclined to join that are going to be closely watching what goes on in the States, where that has now become firmly entrenched. Certainly, it's something that I reject.
What would Ken Dryden say to that?
If you worked with Ken for any length of time, you knew not to put words in his mouth. So I'd be very careful there. But and never had an opportunity during this Trump era, and I can't remember in detail the previous one, to talk to him about what was going on down there. But I can't imagine it was something that he looked upon with anything other than disdain.
I think of Ken Dryden as the unbelievable gentleman. Dignified, friendly, warm, almost the opposite of the current president of the United States. What do you think he would think of Donald Trump?
Again, it's hard to say. I can't imagine there'd be approval, but Ken was his own man. He can find something positive in just about anybody. How you find something positive in that, I don't know, but if there was a way, he'd have found it.
We're going to take a break for some messages and come back with Jack Siegel talking about Ken Dryden in just 2 minutes. Stay with us, everybody. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour. I've got Jack Siegel, who is a lawyer in Toronto. Jack, I think I read that you got ranked one of the best lawyers in Canada, or something like that. Congratulations, and for numerous years in a row. Is that correct?
Yeah, thanks very much. Yeah, there's a publication called Best Lawyers in Canada, and yeah, I've been listed now for quite a few years. It
Congratulations.
comes with the gray hair, Brian.
And you've been in politics for quite a while, I understand.
I started working in politics when I was a teenager. It's
Whereabouts?
always been a bit of a passion. It would have been in the York South Riding in Toronto, down near Eglinton and the Allen Expressway.
I was first involved in politics in 1972 when my second cousin Bob Nixon ran for leader of the Ontario Liberal Party, and then in 1976 I was on Howard Brown, who you'll know, and his executive board for the Ontario New Liberals.
I forgot it had been called that. Yeah, uh, for Bob Nixon, that was Bob's second successful run for leader. He'd been leader when I got first involved. I worked as a page in the Ontario legislature. And in the midst of the October crisis in 1970, I became a liberal, not because of what Pierre Trudeau was doing, and walked around proudly calling myself a Bob Nixon liberal.
Oh, really? That's great.
Yeah,
And then you've been involved ever since, and
yep,
obviously ran into Ken Dryden when he ran, as you said, in your home riding.
exactly.
You said you had a fun story to tell us all about Ken Dryden.
We all have this perspective of Ken as awfully serious, focused, uh, but there was a fun side to Ken that showed up during his years at the House of Commons. As you might be aware, Brian, given the weather in Ottawa, it's not a pleasant walk from building to building, from the West Block to the House of Commons, and the like. So there are tunnels that connect the buildings that are on Parliament Hill, if not the ones that are further away. And Ken used to joke from time to time that it would be great in these long straight tunnels to uh, try bringing in a bowling ball and bowling through there. And so one day, out of the blue, in my social media feed, and then by direct email, I get a video of Ken and his staff doing exactly that. They had somebody at each end of the tunnel, I guess, making sure that security didn't come and interrupt this endeavor in a different sport. And Ken took out a 10-pin bowling ball and gave it a good shot, and certainly sent the ball further than he ever sent a puck as a goalie.
Excellent. What was he like um, in those meetings? You talked about how he would, have lots of people coming up to him in those meetings in your house. But what would he talk about? Would he talk about hockey? Would he talk about politics? Would he talk about what would he talk about?
He didn't initiate on hockey, but obviously when it was brought up, he engaged with people on the subject that interested them. So, yeah, you'd hear a lot of hockey. People would ask about teammates, about certain events, Canada, Russia, and he'd engage on that. But in the course of an election campaign, we'd be talking about policy perspectives from the campaign trail, and people would ask questions. And the event in my home, uh, where it was very local, he would deal with the local questions, and he was always on top of the issues.
My memory, you mentioned social justice issues, childcare is one, and progressivity, and our social safety net. My memory is he was always very strong on national unity as well. Is that your
Oh,
memory?
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely so. He wasn't in politics at a time when it was a uh, overwhelming issue like it was during the two Quebec referenda. But one of the challenges Ken focused on, particularly when he was running for leader, but throughout, was that he had passable French from his time in Montreal, but it wasn't great. and he was bound and determined to communicate with all of the people of Canada in their official language of choice, and improved his French skills throughout.
How do you think he's going to be honored? The political comments, the hockey comments, the just the general societal comments that have been coming in over the course of the last few days have been immense in recognizing him.
I suspect something's going to get named after him. The thought just occurred to me as you asked the question, but there is this huge park in the riding, Downsview Park, which has got a pretty bland name. Maybe after we finish this conversation, I'll start trying to initiate a conversation about renaming it after Ken Dryden. I think something that's focused on recreation in the riding he represented might be an ideal spot for that.
I think that's a great idea. Um, can I read you something from the book that you mentioned, The Game? And I think it's very poignant because it's about playing goal, but it's also something about you know taking it easy in life and being calm and being strong under fire. Playing goal is not fun. Behind a mask, there are no smiling faces, no timely, sweaty grins of satisfaction. It is a grim, humorless position, largely uncreative, requiring little physical movement, giving little physical pleasure in return. A goalie is simply there, tied to a net and tied to a game. The game acts, a goalie reacts. How he reacts, how often, 100 shots or no shots, it's not up to him. Unable to initiate a game's action, unable to focus its direction, he can only do what he's given to do, what the game demands of him, and that he must do. It is his job, a job that cannot be done 1 minute in every three, one that will not await rare moments of genius, one that ends when the game ends, and only then. For while a goal goes up in lights, a permanent record for the goal scorer and the game, a save is ephemeral, whatever that word is, important at the time, occasionally when a game is over, but able to be wiped away, undone with the next shot. It is only when a game ends and the mask comes off, when the immense challenge of a job turns abruptly to immense satisfaction or despair, that the unsmiling grimness lifts and goes away. If you were to spend some time with a team without ever watching them on the ice, it wouldn't take long before you discovered who its goalies were. Goalies are different, whether it's because the position attracts certain personality types or only permits certain ones to succeed, whether the experience is so intense and fundamental that it transforms its practitioners to type. I don't know the answer, but whatever it is, the differences between players and goalies are manifest and real, transcending as they do even culture and sport.
That is so, Ken. Uh, if if people listening to this have never read one of his books, even just pick one up in a library and go through it. His writing style was unique. He frequently wrote in the second person. The word "you" comes up when he's talking about himself frequently in what he would have to say and do. These short, non-grammatically perfect sentences, which convey emotion in a fantastic way. He was an incredible writer, and with all the other achievements, we sometimes overlook that. And I'm glad you chose to read some of that out loud.
Here's a piece from his maiden speech in the House of Commons in October 2004. We have to work with others together, be flexible, find accommodation, discuss, work out, and compromise. Rigid ideologies do not work for us. In many ways, we have had to make it up as we go along. In Canada, we live a find a way existence. We are a find a way people. It is reflected in our habits, our attributes, and personality, in the way we look at the world and interact with it, in our culture and sport, in our expressions as a people. In my other life, I played hockey. Hockey is a game beyond control. We practice it, we make our plans, a coach puts those plans on a board for us all to see, the puck drops, and everything goes haywire. Those who play hockey best, the teams that win, do not agonize at the loss of perfection when the chaos begins. They accept what they have, gather up the pieces, and put them together as fast and as well as they can. They find a way. Different from football's calculations and baseball's order, hockey is a find a way game. Do you think we're a find a way people?
I think very much so. We've been living adjacent to the United States for all of our existence, and we've managed not to be absorbed into that uh, right up through the most recent efforts or talk, which I think is more of what it was. Uh, Canada, I think, is very much about what Ken was talking about there. Uh, we are going to get the job done one way or another, and we're not going to do it somebody else's way.
I ended up having a really interesting conversation with Ronald Corey, the president of the Montreal Canadiens, at one point in time, but he said the big difference with hockey is that 99% of the time the offense has control of the ball. In baseball, the defense has control of the ball, and the offense gets a split second to make something happen by hitting that ball. In football, the offense has control of the ball, and defense gets it if they get a fumble or a turnover or an interception or something like that. But the vast majority of the time, it is sort of a balance between offense and defense. Offense gets a chance, but then defense gets to stop. But the second the puck changes hands to the other team, that team becomes the offense. And so one of the reasons why the hockey is such a spectacular game, and I guess as Ken Dryden referred to it as chaos, is because offense always has control of the ball. And I think that's an interesting a way of describing hockey and the chaos that Ken Dryden talked about. How are you personally going to remember Ken Dryden? What's the most personal meeting, communication, interaction you had with such a celebrity individual?
Um, Maybe if come to this the same way I started. It was his interactions with my son on the Facebook post that caught your eye that I guess led to this discussion. Uh, my son was, I guess, small throughout Ken's career. When Ken left politics, he was all of 8 years old, and he always had time when he was in a room with Ben to chat with him or say something. And one of my favorite memories, oddly enough, was of Ken Dryden being slighted. Uh, there was a political event in Collingwood that we were at. It was one of the earliest events in the leadership campaign, and we had Ken was outside the building leaving, and the phenomenon we've discussed of people thronging to him was continuing, and he was really tired. And he saw us with Ben, coming from the building, and he saw an escape route, and gestured towards Ben and said, "Hi, Ben, how are you?" And my son, who was used to Ken Dryden with all these other people around who were not, turns to Ken and says, "Not now, Ken, I have to pee." And it just summed it up. Ken, to my son, and to some extent to our extended family, was no longer that uber celebrity, that icon. He was somebody that we had a connection to, and it's one that I'm going to value forever.
Jack Siegel, thank you so much for joining us and sharing with us your recollections of Ken Dryden, who passed away and I think is a Canadian hero, a hockey hero, a political hero, and a gentleman that we can all aspire to be like. I think that in today's world, regrettably, we don't have too many examples of people that are exemplary as Ken Dryden was. I've done a couple of shows recently on the challenge of being a man, a young man in today's world, and how in the manosphere there are a whole bunch of negative examples of masculinity and of being a male, a man. And I think Ken Dryden is the opposite of that. He was a team player. He was a leader. He was an incredible athlete. He was a very intelligent individual. He, as you said, wanted social justice. He was great with the written word. I thought he was good. He was good with the spoken word as well. You say he was halting in his speech, but everyone wanted to listen to him
He got better.
because he had something to say, and he continued to say it throughout his whole life. And so I think he's an example of the man that I always wanted to be. That I think many people could aspire to be somewhat like. And if we could hold him up instead of some of the other examples we've got in our society today, as what being a great man is, I think that we'd all do far better. So, Jack Siegel, really appreciate your time, sir.
My pleasure. Thanks, Brian.
That's our show for tonight, everybody. Thank you for joining. I remind you, I'm on every Monday through Friday at 6 o'clock on 960 AM. You can stream me online at www.saga960am.ca. All my podcasts and videos go up on my website, briancrombie.com, on social media, on YouTube, on podcast servers as soon as the radio show goes to air. I think we in Canada have lost a true gentleman, a true leader, a true hockey hero, and it's a shame. But it's going to be wonderful to remember him and celebrate him. And I think there's going to be a numerous different people like Jack Siegel that come forward with some great recollections, and that's going to be wonderful to remember in the next few days. Here's to Ken Dryden. Thank you, Jack.
My pleasure.